The Campo and Joe podcast is brought to you by Bold City Heating and Air. Fast and reliable AC service.
Welcome in Facebook Live. Anybody who tunes in to check us out, Campo and Joe, either on Facebook at 1010XL or any other time when you have time to download our show. Joe C. from XL Primetime, noon to 3 weekdays, our head coach, Dave Campo. And man, we have got a lot to get into. You know, unfortunately, about this time, and I think we've been doing this with everything that we've been doing either on the radio station or just as sports fans. This time a year ago, this football team here in Duval was still playing for the prize. And every time it just kind of gets you a little bit of a gut punch, you know?
Yeah, it does. And again, we're obviously this is a fun time in the National Football League because this is when it really counts. And, you can say without question that the Super Bowl is the prize.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, last year we were, in it. This year we're not.
Yeah.
But even so, the games are fun.
Yeah.
And now it really gets fun after the wild card round.
Yeah, and I think this is a fun time because Coach has been around the game for a long, long time. I'm like everybody else out there watching it, loving it, soaking it all up. And this is a time when this guy probably ramped it up a little bit more. So we may ask for a memory or two, but then also take a look at these week-by-week postseason games because he's going to have to answer to that Dallas Cowboy defense before we're done. Before we're done today, and then also who we think is hot. The thing that gets me more than anything else, we need to get to, as many things Jaguars as we can, and we'll probably start off with the defensive coordinator. But the thing that gets me is the damn Houston Texans, Coach. Okay, this was a football team that Jacksonville split with. They went to Houston and beat them, and I really feel like that was Thanksgiving weekend, and it seems like it was eons ago.
Right.
It was really the last time this team made a statement in the National Football League. Now, they beat the Carolina Panthers week 17, but honestly, doesn't it seem like that was just ages ago?
Absolutely, because, when you lose 5 out of 6 or whatever it was down the stretch, you forget all the good things. It's all becomes negative. And the same thing happens in reverse. A year ago, you had all the negative going.
Joy
all of a sudden, you win 2 or 3 games in a row, and then you run it out the string, and all of a sudden, everything's good.
Yeah.
But both seasons were 9-8.
Yeah.
And that's where it's important that they really remember what you do in December in the NFL. They say in college it's remember what you do in November.
Yeah.
In college it's December.
Yeah, and the thing is that 9-8 versus this 9-8 this year. They're also light years apart because of what you just described.
Right.
You get on a roll, you believe in yourself, everything's possible, nothing is impossible. And then this year, when you lose 5 of 6 on the way to the offseason, you feel like nothing is possible.
Right.
And so there's a lot of doubt that came with this December and into January.
Well, I think what you have to do, really, to be honest with you, if you're really a true fan, you really have to, I don't know if guys record all the games and everything, but I have all the games recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm definitely going to now, once the Super Bowl is done, I'm going to go back and start looking at the games that they won,
right,
and see what they did in those games in comparison to what they did and so that when I talk about the team with you and whoever, I have really some background on what exactly happened this year.
So let's use Houston again as a pawn in this conversation. They won the AFC South. Right. There's no getting away from that. They played their way into the postseason, and Jacksonville played their way out of the postseason. And now we're seeing a Houston Texans team that's going to be tough to deal with, Coach. I was out there just all telling everybody the AFC South belongs in Duval. And now you've got a real legitimate player in the Houston Texans. Rookie head coach, rookie quarterback, first time in NFL history that those two have been able to win a division crown, and now they're playing on.
Well, they're probably going to be coach of the year and maybe the MVP.
Yeah.
At
least rookie of the year without question.
At least rookie of the year, no question. One thing about the draft is it's not an exact science. We say that all the time. And one of the reasons that Stroud slipped a little bit to number 2 was because word got out that his Wonderlic test wasn't the greatest situation. And guess what? I don't know if he knows 10 and 12 is 22, but I know one thing for sure. He knows where to throw the ball, when to throw it, and how to extend plays, and has the poise to handle pressure. So this division, you add Anthony Richardson to it. You don't know what Will Levis is going to be down the road, but he has some talent, or else he wouldn't have been in the top 10. This is going to be a tough division. And to be honest with you, I'm shocked what Houston did, because I didn't think they had the wherewithal to do that. But they've proven that they're not going to be an easy out.
No.
Can they go in and play against the Ravens? Absolutely. The way they're playing right now, anything's possible.
And I went on a little rant on XL Primetime, and I even used Bucky Brooks, who was part of the Jaguars radio team. He is their sideline reporter, and also does plenty of things on Jaguars.com, as well as work for the NFL Network. Well, he put out a piece with the best rookie classes, the best draft class of 2023. And among the top 5, he included the Houston Texans, the Rams, and the Lions. And those are teams that obviously have made hay, have made it into the postseason, and it drives you a little crazy. And this is where I'll probably bash Balky a little bit, that other teams had their draft department or their personnel department at work around the clock leading up to the draft, and they got players on both sides of the football in a number of different rounds to step up and make contributions.
There are guys that have made great contributions. And again, as I said earlier, it's not an exact science. It almost looked like some of the things that we did this year were, we got Christian Kirk. He's going to be out of his contract in a year, so we got to replace him with somebody, so they take Washington. We got Cam Robinson that's, forcing us to take an offensive tackle. We got a tight end situation where who knows what's going to happen with Ingram, because they hadn't done anything with Ingram yet. We got to get us a tight end that can be a combination guy. Well, sometimes that doesn't bode well. Sometimes you just got to take the best guy available that has a value that can give you a chance to, it might be another running back that's better than the guy you got. And so I think that's where we have kind of slipped a little bit.
Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot, but as you're saying it and I'm thinking about it, it does feel like it was more reactionary than proactive in saying, hey, we've got a plan. This is how we're going to build our roster. React to the Cam suspension, go in the first round. The other examples you gave, I think, are legit.
Right.
And I just feel like the thing that drives me crazy, and I'm not apologizing for this. This is the way I feel, is that Trent Baalke, this team had defensive liabilities, and he waited till the 4th round to draft a defensive player, and the first guy was a hurt player in Ventrell Miller. And it made 0 sense to me. Then it still makes 0 sense to me.
Well, again, I don't know what their thinking is over there. I can only go like you. We have an opinion. We're looking at it, and we're saying, well, maybe they should have done this. And a lot of times, and we were pretty proactive on it, saying that why'd they take this guy and why they, don't get me wrong, but a lot of times hindsight's 20/20. You look at the situation, none of these guys helped anything. But we did say that why did they take this guy or why did they take that guy? And I just think that, you really can't tell whether or not a guy's going to be a great player the first year unless the guy just does something exceptional like Stroud or like a couple of the running backs like Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Oh my God.
You take a guy in the 4th round. He
has over 300 catches in 3 years.
And I'll tell you what, I would have taken Amon-Ra with the first pick. I was with him at SC. I know what he could do. But scouts, and when you're watching them on film, is different than when you're in the building with them and you see how they operate.
And Puka Nacua is another good example. Okay?
Absolutely.
Now, Puka, you saw with your days out west, he was at BYU.
Right.
And we're talking about a big human being that immediately asserted himself and got open, took advantage of Cooper Kupp being hurt, and really never looked back. Receptions, brand new rookie record. Yards, brand new rookie record. I mean, the guy was just an absolute stud, and he was taken around the same time Parker Washington was drafted.
Right. And again, that's everybody has a vision of what they want and what they want their team to look like. And, it just, if I look at a guy and you look at a guy, we might get a completely different evaluation of him. Larry Brown, I talk about him all the time, was a 12th round pick for us back in the day when there were 12 rounds.
Yeah.
So it's not an exact science, but you have to have a philosophy that allows you, in my mind, to take the best available player rather than just on need or whatever. And I think they made the right choice on the need.
Yeah.
With the tackle.
Sure.
When Cam didn't show up, that to me was a good pick. He's probably our next left tackle.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could see Anton Harrison being moved over there sooner than later is what you're thinking.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now that's another off-season discussion that we definitely will have. What do you make? Is Cam Robinson necessary for another year? Does Anton go over? Does Walker Little go back to right tackle? Do you re-sign Walker Little? All those things are going to have to be answered. So we will definitely keep doing it. But back real quick to the draft, and I agree that for the most part, you and I said, hey, it doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense that they waited till the 4th round to draft their first defensive guy. But I'll take the hit on this one. I remember saying that Doug Peterson won out over Trent Baalke in the discussion room, in the war room, and said, we need these offensive pieces. Well, guess what? It was not a good decision. I don't know whether it was Doug's. I don't know if it was Trent's. But the bottom line is they did not get enough out of their 2nd and 3rd round picks.
Right. For this year.
year.
I'm hopeful that a guy like Ventrell Miller comes in here next year and he's exactly who they thought he was. And I'm hopeful that Washington's going to have another year. Bigsby's going to have another year. And next year we're saying, well, you know what? That wasn't that bad a pick, but we'll find out. That's the great thing about, a second-year guy and a third-year guy usually makes pretty good improvement if he's a player.
Right.
That's going to be the bottom line.
All right. Now, I want to get back to Houston and the rest of the playoff teams, what we got out of this week, what we get out of what we think will happen in the divisional round. But let's stay on the Jags, and let's talk about the defensive coordinator. When we were doing our podcast last week, guys had been fired. Mike Caldwell and a lot of defensive guys, and then they moved over to the offensive side Tuesday of last week before we did our show. And we talked about all that. And now really not a lot has happened. And I don't expect a lot to happen right away, but let's just go through some of the names that you have heard and an idea of what you think. And maybe start us off, Coach, with the idea that Doug wants to give that defense to someone who can run it, handle it. That would scream experience, wouldn't it, as opposed to giving a younger person that title?
I think looking at it from the outside, that's exactly what you would say. You'd like to have somebody that he can turn the thing over to. And, I think one of the reasons that the decision was made about the defensive coaches, and believe me, when you lose, the defense was not very good down the stretch.
No.
I mean, once the turnovers left, they are who they are. They just gave up way too many plays, made too many mistakes, all those things. That's part of it. But the other part of it, I think, is when Doug evaluated the situation, he made the decision that I can fix the problems on offense, okay? Either by bringing in free agents, if it's player-oriented. If I have to, I can take over the play calling if that's an issue. Don't know that. But I think he made that decision. He looked over at the defense and said, that's really dysfunctional. Yeah. I mean, when you're giving up those kind of plays and you're making a bunch of mistakes and guys are out of gaps, when you see a long run or a long pass with a guy wide open, it's not just a guy getting beat one-on-one.
Yeah.
It's mistakes. And one adds up to the other. If you've got a defensive lineman that's supposed to be in a gap and a linebacker is supposed to be in the next gap, and the defensive lineman goes in the gap that the linebacker is supposed to be in, it's not easy for that linebacker to say, I better get in his gap.
Right.
You got to trust the people around you, and a lot of that happens. So to me, I think you would like to have a guy, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a guy that's been a defensive coordinator for 10 years.
Okay.
There are guys that Aaron Glenn, I always use Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn's done a great job up in Detroit. He's a young guy. He's a first-time coordinator. So, you look at a guy like that, if a guy's got experience, it's who you interview, and number one, trust is involved. So a guy like Manuel, one of the guys that they're looking at,
Manuel,
has been with Doug. He knows him. And I think he's going to be looking for somebody that has a little bit more forceful accountability situation. And I'm saying that not knowing Coach Caldwell, not being in the room with him.
Right.
But, it appears to me that there were times that it was more, okay, we got this. We'll take care of it. I like the way this guy's playing. Really not a fire. And I think that's something that he might be looking for. Yeah. And again, that he might be. I don't know for sure, but that's looking at it from outside. I would say that's important.
And I described Doug Peterson last week, and this has been my description and my view of Doug Peterson for a long, long time. He is a peaceful person. He is not one to gig you, and he's not an antagonist. He's a very positive person. But at the same time, he needs a little fire in the belly.
The Campo and Joe podcast is brought to you by Bold City Heating and Air. Fast and reliable AC service.
And needs to say, hey, this is not the product that I'm putting out there.
Right.
And this is the head coach, okay? That defense is still his, even though that defensive coordinator was the one who got canned. That's still his. That's still his team.
Correct.
And you can appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you kind of look at it as an example. I don't know if you all have out there have looked at all about what's happened with the New York Giants, but the defensive coordinator quit or was let go or whatever down there.
Wink.
And yet everything coming out into the media is that Brian Daboll is a crazy man on game day and in the building and, attacks people personally and all those kind of things. Well, you don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's the other extreme from Doug Peterson. What you need to have in any organization is you can't have you having one personality, the same guy having the next guy having the same personality, the next guy having the same personality. There has to be different type people. The same with players. Yeah. You got to have some dogs in there. You got to have some guys that are just team guys. There's guys that are specialty. They got a role to play. Yeah. So when you look at it, there's a lot of decisions to be made, and it's not just about, a fire and brimstone guy.
Right.
Because is he a guy that Doug can trust? Is he a guy that got such a big ego that he doesn't care what you think as a head coach?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things involved.
It's funny because I've been stumping for Leslie Frazier, right or wrong. I like the idea of a veteran guy that comes in and can immediately take controls. His results, his resume, they all speak for themselves. He's solid through and through, and he's been out for a couple years, I believe.
Yes.
But when he was up in Buffalo, his defenses were at the top of the level, top of the heap, and so I'm stumping for a guy like that because I do think that he can come in and restore order on that side of the football, and then we'll find out how many actual pieces or new players that they need. But to your point, Coach, is Leslie Frazier a fire-breathing dragon?
No, he's not. No, but he is an accountability guy.
Yes.
There's no question. I know Leslie very well.
Yeah.
I would say that Leslie would be outstanding. I would be, I'd be a bit surprised if he doesn't get a head coaching job.
That's what they're going to have to wait out.
And that's what they have to wait out.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I just, again, we can make assumptions, but in reality, whether or not Doug Peterson makes it here in the future and how this team goes is going to be based on he and Trent Baalke.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to put it together what they believe is the best chance for us going forward. And one of the things that people don't realize, it's not like college football, where even as players now in college football, you go in the transfer portal and get anybody you want. Well, it's the same thing in coaching. If you're making $1 million as a coordinator over here, and I'm over here and I want you, if I pay you 1.5, I can get you today. Contracts don't mean a thing.
Where do I sign?
But in the NFL, you're under contract. Right. You're not going anywhere if that if that team doesn't let you go.
Right.
And if you're good, they're not going to let you go.
Yeah, and they're not going to let you go for that lateral move like you're saying.
Exactly.
You have to give them a bigger title.
Right. And so when you look at a guy coming from Baltimore, for example, it may not be Wink Martindale, but it might be the secondary coach, Hewitt, who the Jags interviewed this year, because the system is there. And if you think he's the right guy that can do what you need him to do, that may be the guy. Who knows?
And maybe less headaches than maybe a Wink Martindale who might be a little more hungry for power. Chris Hewitt, spend a minute on him. Baltimore Ravens defensive passing game coordinator and secondary coach. If nothing else, he has learned under some really, really good leaders up in Baltimore.
Absolutely. And it's based on longevity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you could go Harbaugh. What he's done is a miraculous thing, kind of like Tomlin.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's true.
If you stay in this league for a long period of time, you're doing something right. And that's as an assistant coach or a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at a guy like Martindale, he has a reputation of being a certain way. There's a reason Baltimore let him go. Doug needs to do his homework.
Observe that, right?
Is there a reason he left Baltimore? Is there a reason now he can't get along with the head coach?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times the media gets the story from one guy that really is a Martindale guy, for example. You don't know exactly what went on in there.
It's true. It's a great point. I hope people zero in on that because that's legit. And so you have a Chris Hewitt. You have a couple of guys that are coming from the Tennessee Titans staff now that Mike Vrabel has been let go. And so you've got Chris Harris, who you know a little bit about, Tennessee Titans passing game coordinator and the cornerbacks coach. And then also Bowen is another guy that is at least believed to be one of the guys that they will target. Right. And so Chris Harris is a guy that is well respected, and the Mike Vrabel defense was also pretty well respected.
I think a little bit of that is what we're talking about with Baltimore, because I'm not sure why Vrabel got let go, but I know this: his team comes prepared, and they don't not show up.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you get a guy out of that group if, again, has the traits that you're looking for.
Exactly.
He's got the mentality of we're going to be accountable and we're going to show up every week.
Right.
And I think that's what you're looking at when you look at some of these guys. That's the decision that Doug and Trent or whoever's making a decision, Shad, has to make.
Yeah, because I'm looking, Shane Bowen, I'm just trying to see if I can find the numbers right now, just as far as where this team ranked on the defensive side of the football. And it's not like you're weakening the enemy and strengthening yourself, because that staff has been blown out.
Right.
But that was a successful defensive football team.
Absolutely. And that's because they have the traits of Vrabel.
Right.
It never give up. We're gonna play, and obviously I don't know exactly. I haven't watched them enough to know exactly what they do, but I know one thing: they're going to show up.
Yeah, and they had to fight back against a football team that struggled to score points. So they were on the football field a lot longer than maybe you'd like them to be, or anybody would like them to be. Right. Anyway, they were middle of the pack. They were 17th when you're looking at overall defense, and it's not a terrible number. They averaged giving up 335 points a game. The Jaguars were 22nd, and they averaged giving up about 10 more yards. That's how close these things are. And they gave up 33 touchdowns, and the Jaguars gave up 44.
Remember, we've been complaining about the fact that the offense didn't have a great year this year either.
Yeah.
Neither did theirs.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So stats can
point.
Look at however you want to look at them. The reason that the Jaguar coaches are not here was an issue within the group.
Yes.
It wasn't about whether or not they finished 22nd or 25th.
Right.
Mike McCarthy, the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, the year he went to Green Bay as a head coach, he was offensive coordinator at San Francisco. He was 27th in the league.
Yeah.
But it's the person you're hiring.
Yeah, it's true.
His philosophy, how he operates, all those kind of things. And that's why we as media guys and fans can't pick that guy.
No.
because we don't know exactly what we're looking at and what they're looking at.
I heard somebody say when you start behaving like a fan, you have the emotion of a fan, and then you make the decision of a fan, and it really can get in the way.
Yeah.
But I like what you say. Let's leave it there because we will keep, obviously, our eyes and ears on this and find out where they go. But hiring the right guy on that side of the ball is going to be paramount to Peterson's success.
And as we go along here, I have enough contacts in the league that once this thing gets going a little bit more, I'll have a decent idea of what the reputation is and some of the things, because I've been in the league for as long as I was.
Which is great. The measure of a man, the measure of a coach, why he hired him.
Right.
All right, real quick, just coming out of this first Super Wildcard weekend, a couple declarations. We already mentioned the Houston Texans, how they impressed us. Green Bay Packers impressed the heck out of me, Coach. Look, you're more teal than you are cowboy blue anymore, but they should have rehired you on the spot as defensive coordinator after what Dan Quinn's bunch did the other night.
That was a rough one.
That was embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, they've kind of been this way all year. I kind of say it about the Baltimore Ravens. When you look at the Baltimore Ravens, I'm just comparing here.
Sure.
I made the comment that you can run the ball on the Baltimore Ravens, and we didn't run it enough. We ran it 17 times, but it was 4.4 average for ETN. Okay, well, it's kind of that way with the Cowboys, only even bigger. They rush the passer and play the run on the way to the quarterback. Yeah. They don't stay there and take guys on and do all
Risky.
that stuff. If one of their defensive guys, they've got playmakers. So if one of those guys makes a play, it's either a tackle for loss or it's a pretty good run. That's how they operate. And it finally caught up with him with Jones, the running back from Green Bay.
Oh, my gosh.
But Green Bay's scheme of run, play, action I'm old school. That's how I envision an offense running. And that makes me nervous.
Yeah.
About San Francisco playing them, because it will be a ball game. I think San Francisco is better than they are, but I'm not sure about the spread on that one.
Yeah, that's about a 9.5 point line. Texans are a 9-point dog. The Bucs are a 6-point dog to Detroit. I like what I'm seeing from Detroit right now. I really am.
Yep.
I got to give Baker a lot of credit for the way he played.
Absolutely.
I tell you what, he had some wide open Buccaneers that didn't catch the ball either.
Right.
So he played well. I don't think it continues with them. And then the other one, like you said, you think that it's going to be a close game. And then the last one, Kansas City and Buffalo. Let's hit that one.
That's going to be an interesting one because I think they're both good enough to go all the way in the AFC. So, that's going to be one that the loser probably could have won the next game. But that's tough going into Buffalo and playing that game. And I don't think Kansas City's quite as good as they've been. I like Buffalo because I think the quarterback is just a coming into his own at the end of the year of how good he can be.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be 0,
Degrees.
which Kansas City's already played in it, so it's not like they don't know how to play in it either.
Yeah.
But I think Buffalo is a pretty good football team, but I think Kansas City is as well. I think that'll be a tight one.
Should be a good one. Divisional round. We look forward to it. We were there last year. Need to get back there soon. That's for sure. All right. We appreciate all of Duval for hanging out with us. Joe C. from XL Primetime. Talk to you noon to 3. And then our head coach, Dave Campo, as always. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
This presentation of the Campo and Joe podcast is brought to you by Bold City Heating and Air. Fast and reliable AC service.